Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. The regular board meeting of the Governing Board of Trustees of Romoland School District is called to order at 3 p.m. Roll call, Mr. Reller.
Here.
Mr. Sperry.
Here.
Mrs. Kleitz.
Here.
Ms. Aguirre is absent and Ms. Moon is here. Nikki, do we have any comments for closed session?
No, we do not.
Thank you. So closed session is called at 3:01 p.m. to discuss negotiations.
Looks like we have everybody, Vince, so we're ready when you are.
Yeah, we can start.
Mr. Butler, are we streaming yet? Are we ready to go?
Yes, we're ready to go.
Ms. Moon, whenever you're ready. Ms. Moon, you're muted. If you're talking, I can't tell.
Okay, well, that helps. I was muted. All righty. The regular board meeting of Romoland School District reconvenes at 3:32. Mrs. Kleitz, was there any action in closed session?
There was no action taken.
Thank you. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And we'll start now. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm now going to read the governance norms. We agree to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, and work together for the common good. For communications, Governing Board of Trustee reports, Mr. Gary is absent. Mrs. Kleitz, anything to report?
I would just like to, first of all, once again, thank the staff for their hard work and negotiations and putting together the start of this year. And I know it's been a rough road, but I'm so proud of our Romoland team, from everybody in the entire district, from A to Z.
Thank you. Mr. Reller.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to apologize for the length of my comments here, just in case they go long. I was hoping that we could meet face-to-face during this meeting, but hopefully we can start that next meeting because, our staff is going to have to be working and distributing Chromebooks and things like that. So I think it's important for us to be able to meet face-to-face as long as we meet the governor's requirements with respect to social distancing and masks, etc. I also want to thank the governor. He made an announcement the other day about how to reopen schools, and I think it was very courageous on his part, because I think he took it out of politics and took it out of opinion and put it solely in science and data. So now we know our benchmarks that we need to hit as a county in order to get our kids back into face-to-face schooling. And so I started researching on the state of California's COVID-19 website, and actually very, very good information. And a lot of information comes from Riverside County. So I wanted to find out, well, what's Riverside County's thoughts on increasing our COVID rate or our COVID cases? Well, Riverside County reported to the state of California that they believe that the increase was due to state prisons and federal prisons and skilled nursing facilities. Also, the transmission of COVID-19 in our recent local protests without people out there without face coverings. They also said that we have people that transfer into Riverside County from Imperial County. And then also those that are coming to Riverside County from Northern Baja California. and they travel on the 86 corridor into Coachella Valley, and those cases are counted towards Riverside County. And of course, they highlighted when we opened up the economy a little bit, the gatherings. So they talk about their concerns of we have to monitor the data, we have to increase testing, we have to start tracing, and we have to increase that public messaging about the importance of personal protection. And we need to coordinate with our California Department of Public Health as well as the county. So looking at the data that the governor put out, what we need to look at in order to meet that threshold. And it's, when you're looking at state and federal prisons and Riverside County accepting patients from other counties, I'm not too pleased that those data, those individuals that have COVID or are coming to Riverside County and counting against us. And another, the indicators that we're actually making in Riverside County, we're meeting them, is the ICU bed availability and the ventilator availability. We're not meeting the case rate criteria that the governor has set. And that's where I'm going to need Trevor's help in communicating with Dr. Kaiser here in Riverside County, because when I read it and I'm trying to understand what do they mean by case rate? What is a case? And a case is affected by, and a case rate's affected by the number of people who are tested in Riverside County. And as you know, a lot of people have went to go get tested and the lines are long, and that's affecting our case rate negatively. And so I need to know from Dr. Kaiser, what is a definition of a case? I know how they calculate the case rate, but what's the definition of that case rate? And I'm concerned about for example, if someone passes away from a vehicle accident and they test them for COVID-19 and they're test positive, do they count that person as a positive test for COVID-19? And that is counted against our data in Riverside County. So like I said earlier, currently Riverside County meets the criteria except in case rate. And I need to know and how to communicate with our community what we need to do to mitigate that case rate. And if I understand that case rate correctly, then I can better communicate that to our community. And that's where I can support our mitigation efforts. And if it is social distancing, masks, eating outdoors, et cetera, if anyone can do it, Riverside County can do it. And we have to do it for, I think, 14 straight days. And if we work together and communicate that message as a school district, and we work within the county, because every child is connected to a school district, we can beat this thing and get our kids back into school.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reller. Mr. Sperry. Mr. Sperry, anything to read?
There we go.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
I don't have anything. I wasn't unmuting. Gotcha. I'm good.
Okay. And then myself, I have to concur with Mrs. Kleitz and Mr. Reller. And to add to Mr. Reller's comments about cases, of course, they're going to go up because they're testing. But what I don't see going up is the death rates. So I concur that our superintendent, which I know he has been reaching out with the public health department to find these answers. And I also want to thank our administration, faculty, staff, everyone, because they worked so hard and they were prepared to offer all three models. So of course we are mandated by the governor to remain closed, but I want to thank every single one of them to offering all three options and being prepared to offer that to all our community. I'm going to call now on Trevor for a superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Moon. I'm gonna read so I don't omit something. It'll take a minute, but then I also want to communicate with the board that I'm going to take the opportunity this year in the superintendent's report section to ask a cabinet member or two to share out some information that may not be worthy of a full-blown presentation, but will provide some updates to the board on some things that they're doing. And so we'll begin that tonight too as well. So with my part, on March 13th, school facilities were closed last spring due to the COVID concerns, and schools were tasked with providing distance learning opportunities for students that ultimately lasted until the end of the 1920 school year. Despite those challenges and circumstances, the district and our community pulled together, and the transition into our distance learning program was quick and it was efficient, and it supported our students and families effectively. No sooner did that get accomplished and we transitioned into summer learning opportunities for students. And so we've been providing virtual summer school. And once again, our administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, guardians, and students all contributed to a great summer learning program for our students. And of course, over the course of the summer, all summer, we've been preparing for the start of this school year, the 2021 school year. We've communicated choice in terms of learning model options, virtual, hybrid, and traditional, and trying to meet the needs of our community and our staff. And on Friday, July 17th, Governor Newsom, to echo what Mr. Reller said, he basically indicated that any schools residing in counties that are on the California Department of Public Health watch list must start virtually. And Mr. Reller, I read that same description in Riverside County that you were referencing today, by the way. This announcement helped provide some clarity and criteria for opening school facilities for in-person instruction, but it leaves us with a short time frame to transition our entire district into a virtual learning environment. And it's different than last spring. There are far more restrictions. There's far more accountability going into the start of this school year than when we were closed on an emergency basis last spring. And you'll hear about some of that in tonight's presentation. Our staff and community have exhibited outstanding patience and collaboration during these uncertain times, and I'm sure we're going to continue to do so as we finalize details as quickly as possible for the start of the school year. While our school facilities will not start the year with in-person instruction, school is open, and I have no doubt that we're going to be ready to open virtually on August 6, 2020. With meaningful and rigorous learning experiences for our students, and they will be supported by our outstanding staff. And so that's the bar we've set for ourselves with the help of the governor. And like we do most times, we'll meet those expectations and have a great start to the school year. And so with that, I will turn it over and ask Mr. Butler, our Chief Technology Officer, to give a brief update on some infrastructure work that occurred this summer.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to share tonight the great news that this summer we completed our network bandwidth upgrade. This is a project that we've kind of been working on over the last 2 years here in the district to expand the amount of bandwidth available to each of our school sites, as well as our internet connection that serves the entire district. So with this project completed, basically what that means is that each of our schools now have a 10 gig connection that connects the school to the entire district's network, which is an increase from the 1 gig connection that they had previously. So that's a considerable improvement. And we have also increased the capacity of the internet link that serves the school district to now it's actually 2 links, each of those being a 10 gig link as well. So what's really, I think, the most notable thing about this upgrade is that not only is it increasing the amount of bandwidth available to our schools, which it was important since nearly everything that happens in our classroom on technology now is web-based, is using the internet and relies on that. as well as phones and other things that we kind of rely on for our daily operations here in the district. So not only do we now have that increase in our bandwidth to support those things, but it's also been designed in a resilient fashion so that it's much less likely that some kind of an unexpected event like someone taking out a telephone pole or a backhoe digging up something in a construction site somewhere out in Moreno Valley is not going to take us out, that we'll be able to continue to function in the event that those things happen. So really excited to have this done. This is an E-rate project, so props to the federal government for continuing to operate that program so that we can benefit from that. And I'm really excited to see that will continue to benefit our technology programs in our classrooms once we're able to get our students back into our classrooms. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. And also, I'm just going to show really briefly, since I got talking and forgot to show this, because it's hard for me to talk and operate at the same time, this drawing that kind of shows what the design of our new network looks like. So you can see basically what's happening here is in the middle in that little cloud section there. We've got multiple connections connecting all of our elementary schools to our two hub sites, one at the district office and one at Chase, and then those each have a connection to Riverside County, one at a facility in Riverside County and Riverside, and one in a Riverside County facility in Murrieta, so that we have that resilient pathway so that if something goes down somewhere, we still have a way to get to the internet, we still have ways to get to our school sites.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Trevor, is there anything else you'd like to add? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to have Ms. Cole share with you briefly on the topic of meal service during the start of the school year virtually. So Ms. Cole, would you do that, please?
Yes, I will. And thank you for the opportunity to share an update on the nutrition services program. First, I want to give you a reminder of what's happened in the last few months. I'm sure you'll recall that our nutrition services staff began serving our summer meals to the community on June 7th. And this was on the heels of 3 months of providing meals to the entire community for children ages 18 and under. So nutrition services has not missed a beat. To date, 56,958 summer meals have been served, and these are breakfast and lunch meals 7 days a week. So this program will end on July 31st, and we are slated to resume services to our students only on August 6th. We are working on a plan. We have it in a rough draft form. There are a few details to iron out before it'll be in the next few days, and we will provide all those details to the board at that time. But what I can tell you is that we will be aligning our program with the instructional model that's used for our students. We'll be serving at 4 of our schools and doing food prep at 1 school. And so we're eager to get started with that. We feel like we have a good plan in place. And I would just like to take this opportunity to commend the nutrition services staff under the direction of Mr. Juan Valencia and all the work they have done to provide food for our students and community during this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Moon. That concludes my report area.
Thank you. We're going to move on to public comments. Nikki, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. We have 2, so I'll go ahead and read the first one.
Prior to reading those, could I read a short little paragraph? Members of the audience are invited to address the board at this time on each agenda or non-agenda item. The Ralph M. Brown Act, and in accordance with the board policy 9323, limits the governing board and the staff's ability to respond to comments on non-agendized matters at this time such comments are made. If appropriate, the board may direct the superintendent to follow up on topics brought up in public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes per topic. All requests to the Board of Trustees must be submitted on the request to address the Board of Trustees Google form prior to 2 p.m. The regular board meeting open session is scheduled to begin at 3:30. Thank you, Nikki. Now you can continue.
Sure. So the first comment is from Cynthia Cook, Boulder Ridge Elementary staff member, and she submitted, "We learned yesterday that the Romoland School District plans to move forward with their plan to reopen their doors once the County of Riverside has been removed from the monitoring list for 14 consecutive days. At that point in time, teachers who were assigned to be in person, whether it was or was not their preference, would stop teaching remotely and teach in the classroom. I am reaching out to the Board of Trustees to ask you all to prioritize the health and safety of our Romoland community and commit to distance learning for all students until health officials and experts all agree it is fully safe to return. If we all commit to distance learning, it gives us the opportunity to develop routines, procedures, and effective strategies to ensure we are providing rigorous and meaningful instruction to students. We cannot be the reason students endure additional trauma at home because of a COVID-related death or a serious illness of a loved one. A few of my concerns are listed below. 1, staff must maintain 6 feet between each other and with students, which means we cannot reap the benefits from in-person learning when we cannot run small group instruction at a table that allows for close proximity, cannot have students working collaboratively, need to have students in rows rather than purposefully grouped, cannot get within 6 feet of students to provide assistance, must enforce unnatural rules prohibiting children from socializing and playing the only way they know how. In the event of an emergency, hard, soft lockdowns, fire, or earthquakes, students and staff will be forced to gather for safety, which jeopardizes their health. Our classrooms are not big enough to space desks 6 feet apart, and we are expected to have regular class sizes. If a substitute does not show up, will students be split up into other classrooms, increasing the class size? 2, complications with closures of in-person learning rise the following questions. Will all children and the teacher be sent home when a child reports symptoms, or will we have to wait to dismiss a classroom when positive test results are received and shared? Will a child's siblings, shared household members, and their classmates and teachers be sent home as well? It's likely that our students will have to revert back to online instruction several times throughout the year. We will resume only to go back online again. The back and forth disrupts learning and does not allow the students, teachers, and families an opportunity to familiarize themselves with any model. Additionally, we all have questions regarding use of sick days during quarantines, workers' compensation, and substitutes facilitating the spread of COVID among the different schools, classrooms, and districts where they work. With so many uncertainty, I'm hopeful that the Board of Trustees will come together to determine that distance learning is what is best for our Romoland community to provide safe and consistent instruction. Thank you for your time and attention. The second comment comes from Adrienne Lamoth, a Mesa View Elementary parent. And she submitted, thank you for making information available regarding the 4 meals that will be provided daily. This is an important service for those families experiencing increased economic stress due to the current pandemic. While the offering is appreciated, I hope the meals provided will be healthier. Riverside Unified School District provided students fresh fruits and vegetables, while my children had corn dogs and chocolate milk offered for pickup multiple days in a row at Ethan A. Chase. Our students deserve healthy options also. We eventually stopped picking up lunch because the options were not healthy. How will special needs students be appropriately educated? This includes gifted students. Are teachers adapting virtual lessons with 504 plans and IEPs? I feel as though our special needs students were largely left behind in the spring semester, and we cannot afford to disservice our community families and students in that way again. Thank you, and I hope to hear back from the board regarding these issues that affect teachers and students. And that concludes our public comments for this evening.
Thank you. Trevor, will you be addressing this later in the presentation? Cynthia Cook's comments and Adrian's?
We'll be talking to some of these topics. Some of the stuff regarding leave provisions and things would be an internal staff communication. Other things regarding the broader scope of our educational programs will be discussed in our board meeting in a few minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Employee action reports. Do we have any association reports, Mr. Murray?
We do not, from either RTA or CSEA.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to informational items. Oh, hang on. I just lost my connection. I'm back. Informational items. And this is regarding school reopening instructional models. I believe, Mr. Murray, you're going to address this.
I am. It'll be a little bit of a team effort, but I'll be kind of taking the lead.
Okay.
Okay, so I haven't done a presentation. I think Mr. Butler is going to kind of move it from one screen to the next as I ask him to. But this is just an introduction to you guys and let you know a little bit about how we're opening our school sites for the 2021 school year as of today. So if you can turn the page to the next one, we still have our 3 instructional models that we're working towards: the traditional, the hybrid, and the virtual options. And right now, we are, of course, opening the school year under virtual, but we still want to get information from our families about which model they want to have as we transition back into a school site setting, like with the traditional or hybrid models. So we can move on to the next screen. This is a survey we did of our members of our community related to what instructional models they would like their children involved in for this upcoming school year. And you can see the numbers. We have 1,185 kids that requested traditional, 632 in the hybrid, and 822 for virtual. At the bottom, you can see that basically we're defaulting 1,268 kids to a traditional model. But this week, we thought it'd be awfully important to reach out to those families, and we're making an effort to reach out by phone call and additional emails to see if they have developed either a plan for which model they want to go into, or if they just had not responded over the summer to the instructional model they were most interested in. So we're starting to whittle down that number a little bit, and we've had some success with that. And then on top of that, we have the model selected by our teaching staff. You can see there's a range from 57 requesting traditional, 41 for a hybrid, and 82 staff that have requested the virtual model of instruction as we begin the school year. On to the next screen, please. As we know, last Friday, we got some new information from the state. Governor Newsom presented based upon some new state trends of rising cases of COVID, and the fact that Riverside County is on the watch list for the state of California. And ultimately, for a school district to come back off of, or to go back into in-person instruction, we have to be off of the watch list for 14 consecutive days before in-person instruction is even considered. And because of that, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are starting the year under the virtual model of instruction. You can go on to the next screen. This is an awfully important bill. This came from the California State Senate, and it's simply our Senate Bill 98. And the goal of this legislation is basically to make sure that online instruction is equal to in-person instruction. The idea is they want to have a hybrid model, a virtual model that are equal to what a student would receive in a classroom if they're attending school on a daily basis. And some of the bullet points we have down below: the grade level work should equal and must equal to work provided in a traditional model. It ensures daily live instruction with teachers and student peers. We have instruction, progress monitoring, and also kind of a key point, providing feedback to the students on what to improve upon as they continue with their education. moving forward, we have to provide students who are working below grade level additional support for those students, along with our EL students and students who are on IEPs. Those are 3 target groups that have to be provided, as we do in the regular environment, with additional support in the classroom, even though it's a virtual program. I think it's important to let you know a couple things. There's a couple of definitions that come up during this presentation that are awfully important to understand. And it's the concept of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And both of them deal with online instruction. But when you talk about synchronous instruction, it's basically the online or distance education that happens in real time. Direct instruction, the teacher working online to provide instruction to the classroom as a whole. There's also asynchronous instruction, and that's online or distance education without real-time interaction. And that work can be done as individual needs for that individual student. It could be every kid working on the same assignment, but the key thing is there's no real-time interaction between the teacher and the student at that moment. We can go to the next screen.
No, Mr. Murray, can I stop you? I'm sorry.
Oh, no
I'm
problem.
doing this virtually. I hate to interject. I'd like for Ms. Giroux to talk a little bit about how in a virtual model we're able to provide those supports for students performing below grade level and also meeting the requirements and the supports for our students learning English. And then following her, I'll ask Ms. Cass to talk about how we're able to meet the needs of students that are on IEPs.
Good evening. So for meeting the needs of our low performing and also our English learner students in the virtual model, you'll see within the presentation the elementary and middle school sample schedules that we've prepared. In both of those schedules, you'll see time for specific time for small group instruction, as well as teacher office hours, which would be used for those purposes. Just like during the traditional model, teachers will receive prior to the beginning of the school year a list of EL students that are enrolled in their class. So that way then they can plan for their integrated and designated ELD lessons that they will be able to incorporate within that virtual platform. As well as the school year starts, teachers will be able to provide diagnostics and formatively assess students to understand their needs so that they're better able to meet them through that virtual learning platform. We will encourage teachers to use screencast videos, and this will allow for students to be able during their asynchronous instruction time to go back and review the video and be able to clarify their learning or clarify the instructions of any activities that they've been asked to perform. And also parents and families will be able to watch those videos. A couple other features that can be used in the virtual learning platform would be a text-to-speech option, which will show the spoken word on the student's screen, which will be extremely helpful for our English learners, as well as all teachers are able to create personalized student slide decks within Google Classroom, so that every single student is receiving their own slide deck with assignments that are tailored to meet their specific needs, and be able to put in and embed such things as sentence starters or sentence frames, as well as modified assignments, and to be able to ensure that they're mastering standards.
Ms. Casco.
Okay, great. So looking at our services for our students with disabilities, we're fully integrating into every aspect of preparation and participation in the virtual models. Our special education services will be provided virtually. This includes services such as speech services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, adaptive PE. All services on students' IEPs will be provided in a virtual platform. This also includes holding IEP meetings virtually and any special education assessments that would need to be done whether it's initial or a follow-up assessment for a triennial, those would also be conducted virtually. And we will use the IEP meetings to help customize educational supports and opportunities to ensure that students with disabilities are having their individual needs met in that virtual model as well. Our case carriers will co-author or co-teach and collaborate with general education teachers in relation to students with disabilities that they serve. And that can be done, like Ms. Drew was sharing, through the Google Classroom platform and our other learning management systems that we use to ensure, again, that they're progressing with their goals. Students receiving support in our RISE program will continue to access their alternative life skills curriculum virtually, which is unique learning systems along with attainment math and our Sandy tools that we use. We're happy to report that there was a lot of success with that over our extended school year. And then we also want to ensure that IEP teams are meeting and being very critical with their planning to ensure that students and families are working together to jointly determine what's working well in the virtual learning models and what, if any, accommodations or modifications would be needed to allow students the greatest type of access they can get during this time while addressing their services in the least restrictive environment.
And my apologies for almost skipping Ms. Cass and Mr. Rue. If you go to the next page, you can see that Senate Bill 98 continues with some additional information. Schools shall be, 180 instructional days, just as a regular school year would be. We also have to document student attendance on a daily basis. And I believe we're going to have Ms. Cass respond to this concept as well.
Yes, so we want to ensure that our students are attending in the virtual model and participating. And so if there is a need to support students with re-engagement when it comes to attendance, then we would have our site attendance teams work together through a multi-tiered system of support that includes any type of conferencing with parents and students to ensure that there's appropriate access, if there's any kind of technological needs that aren't being met that might inhibit someone, a student, from participating daily. We're also looking at positive incentives to support students with ongoing engagement throughout the instructional day, as well as possibilities for mentors, if that was something that would benefit a student, really utilizing our A2A system to communicate with families as well if there are attendance concerns and needs, so that we can be more proactive in our approach instead of letting time go by prior to implementing any intervention.
So attendance is just one of the components. We also have to document that we have completed work from each of our students. And I think Mr. Rue is going to add a little bit of information on this topic.
So we're currently in the process of creating a teacher log at this time. It would be a document that would, the teacher would be able to document student time in both asynchronous and synchronous instruction, as well as document their daily participation rate and the tracking of how they are submitting assignments. Once that document has been created, it will be shared out with our teaching staff so that they'll be able to give us input on the form, and we can ensure and make any modifications, but ensure that it is meeting the need of the requirements of SB 98, as well as ensuring that the documentation process is not too time consuming for our staff.
So if we go to the next page, student attendance is just an absolute importance throughout the regular school year in the best of circumstances. In this virtual model, it's going to be even more important to make sure we reach out to families and to students who are not attending and engaging themselves in the virtual instruction. And it becomes a priority for all of our staff. Certificated support staff, such as counselors, this will be a primary job they'll have as the school year continues. But we also have to see the need to potentially bring in some of our classified staff based upon considerations and communication with our local classified association, making sure that we have the ability to reach out to families and to students who are not attending as often as need be. And one of the key things is we have to make sure that they're in attendance at least 60%, or if they miss 60% of the week, we have to reach out to those students on an individual basis. And that will become not only a priority for the district, but for the school sites, but also for the district office. We'll have to maintain regular communications with parents and guardians regarding academic progress. And that's for students who are attending, as well as the ones that we're having concerns with not attending school on a daily basis. And the final bullet point there is providing meal service for the students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunches. And we'll continue doing that. It's been a priority for us through the school closures at the end of the school year and over the summer program as well. And we'll continue that into the new school year.
So I'm gonna ask that we pause and go back once. Thank you, Vince. It's a lot of information. So if there are any specific questions related to Senate Bill 98 and maybe what you just heard, we could clarify. Just so you know what's coming up, we'll be talking about student schedules here in a bit, and then also some internal accountability that we need to embed to make sure that we are meeting the requirements of Senate Bill 98. So with that,
I have a question. Mrs. Crass, maybe you would be the best one for this one. I'm going to give you a scenario. I have a student is receiving some kind of special services, and this is a worst case scenario. I know this won't happen, but my gosh, the teacher's not coming on board. There's problems. What would you recommend that parent do in that case? I mean, what kind of troubleshooting? Where should that parent go to help first?
So partnerships with our families are now more important than ever, especially in a virtual model where communication will be essential to student success. So I would share with a parent that if they're having trouble getting a teacher to log on, first maybe email that teacher just to make sure there's not something missing on the teacher's end, making sure that contact information is correct. That's where we'd always want to start. Do we have the right email addresses and phone numbers and things like that to get in touch with each other? And then if it did continue to be an issue where a student wasn't receiving the supports that they were due per their IEP, it would probably be in the best interest of the parent to reach out to the site administrator and ask for some guidance and support, and maybe come together and have a meeting as a team to address, those concerns. We always go back to that IEP meeting to address the concerns and document what supports and services need to take place for a student.
Perfect. That will help, because that may or may not happen, but it's good information for a parent to have. I appreciate that. John, and my last question, John, you had mentioned about the attendance. I'm huge on attendance, and I just want to see our kids attending virtually. You mentioned a 60% rate. Where did that come from per week or something?
It's out of the Senate bill, and it's really designed to give us a number that if the student has missed this much school, we have to make sure that we're engaging them and bringing them back into the instructional component. Mr. Rue may have some additional information on this topic. Would you have anything to add to that?
well, this Mr. Payton, I'll add to that. So I guess what I would say is that's a minimum standard set forth by legislation, that if a student hasn't participated in 60% of the weekly instruction, that we are then mandated to do an individual outreach to that student and their family. And we would do so. There are also other scenarios where kids, maybe they're not hitting I've disengaged for 60% a week, but maybe they are consistently missing portions of a week. And that's where our internal accountability comes in. And we have strong systems in place for when we're in our traditional school setting for attendance. And we basically are going to be tweaking and adjusting those for a virtual environment with the help of our support staff. What we don't know is the volume yet, right, of how many of those outreach efforts we'll need to make. But we have some automated systems in place, but nothing really works as well as a personalized phone call in my experience. And so we'll be setting up some structures for that as well.
So the SART and SART process still will be in effect, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Is there going to be a required amount of time that a teacher is required to meet synchronously with the students or the class? And then is it going to be the same time every day so everybody knows that they have to join at that time? And then my second part of that question is, will they be having another face-to-face or synchronous meeting later in the day to address any questions?
In a moment, we'll actually be going to a couple of sample schedules for the elementary and the middle school. And if we look at those, it might help answer some of the questions that you had right there.
Perfect.
And I would say, Ms. Moon, that those schedules were designed to meet the minimum instructional minutes requirement. So as we share those schedules, they do meet our instructional minute obligations.
Excellent. Thank you.
John, one of the reasons why I brought up the question about attendance and teachers taking attendance, sometimes these processes that we put into place can be very intrusive on teachers' time. They've got a lot of work to do with planning virtual lessons, office hours and things like that. Is there anything in the background through Google Classroom or anything that can take attendance for us so teachers don't have to click a checkbox and all their kids to say that they've participated?
I'd have to get back to you on that topic. I'm not sure if Google automatically has a tool that will do that.
I can answer that, and the answer is no. There isn't any sort of built-in automatic attendance taking. It would need to be done currently by the teacher.
And I would also add that under Senate Bill 98, there's also multiple ways to that you meet the attendance requirement. So we'll provide those details in a future communication with the board. In a traditional format, it's the body sitting in your classroom. But there's some ways to where your attendance requirements are met by submission of completion of work and some different things. So we'll provide all of that information in an upcoming communication.
Thank you.
So if we move on to the first schedule, which would be the elementary virtual schedule. Here's an example of what a schedule can look like. And there is a lot of flexibility with our instructional staff with the idea that they have to meet the instructional minute component of a school day. But as we go through it, this is one sample of what a teacher can create. And this is going to be a collaborative effort, particularly early in the year between our departments, our grade levels, the school administration, to identify what is the core area, what needs to be covered on a daily basis. This is an example that can be used multiple times over the course of a week. And this could also be the basis long-term of every week we'll be doing these things at this time, or it could be a change from one week to the next. The teaching staff have a lot of influence on how they create their schedule. But as you go through it, you can see that we start off with a morning class meeting where attendance is taken, and that is done synchronous in a manner. And what it is basically, everybody's online at the same time to take attendance. It would then move into whole group instruction, possibly some small group instruction where it would be a particular group. It could be EL population. It could be the students who have struggled on the standardized tests. It could be whichever group that they identify as a priority group. And then it could go into another small group instruction. Actually, the way they put it down was a reading group and then an ELD group. They have a small break, come back for whole group instruction on math science, and then small group instruction, and then independent work time. I think one of the key things is you see that we have a lunch break from 12 to 12:40, and then after the lunch break is done, it says independent work time and teacher office hours. And the teacher office hours component is one that I believe Ms. Giroux can speak to about in some detail about what they can use or what is being done during that period of time.
Sure. So during the independent work time or the teacher office hours, teachers and students will determine what types of activities that they would be doing at that time, whether it's small group check-ins or one-on-one check-ins. It would also be a time maybe that a teacher could touch base and do goal setting or looking over an assignment and getting feedback. All of those are acceptable uses of that time, and really being able to use that time to connect with students and ensure that they understand what is expected of them for each assignment, and be able to mediate any of that and clarify the assignments during that time.
So Ms. Moon, I believe this would address your previous question where, much like in a traditional classroom where there's a certain amount of direct instruction and what we would call maybe a gradual release of responsibility, and teachers are able to do small groups, but then students then have access to that, to the teacher later in the day, that in this case from 12:40 to 2:20, if they encounter problems and they need follow-up clarification or support, that is an opportune time for that to occur.
Absolutely. And I really love that you're showing how this is going to work. I understand the whole group. When it's small groups, is the whole class then broken into like breakout rooms where they're working on projects together in a smaller group, and then the teacher just goes to each group?
So I'll answer that, and it could look different, but I'll draw comparisons to a traditional classroom because that's what we know the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in a traditional classroom, there's a certain time of whole group instruction, and then a teacher then may pull a small group for a specific targeted intervention. In this case, it's reflected as reading, but the rest of the class may still be engaged in that broad classroom assignment that had been done through whole group instruction. And so that's kind of the concept here, right?
Perfect.
There is the dedicated time to your entire class, and then there are times allotted for ELD and targeted instruction. If you are not in one of those intervention groups, it means that you don't need that intervention, and maybe you are then engaged in your whole group assignment that was done previously, but you're doing that in an independent manner.
So this basically is attending full time. It's just virtually. So the students are still receiving the same high level of education of what would go on in the classroom. We're just utilizing technology to do it in a safe environment. Is that pretty accurate?
I think that's a fair statement. There's some nuances and differences. The best way that I have found to articulate that to people that maybe have a difficult concept with virtual learning is to make the connections back to a traditional classroom and show how it works. So that's what I just tried to do a few minutes ago. Was in a traditional classroom, there's a certain amount of whole group instruction. Then there's the gradual release of responsibility that then eventually goes to independent work, what we would consider homework potentially in the evenings. And we can do that same kind of progression in a virtual environment as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
So as you look at it, and there's still, even within this example right here, there's some potential to adjust it so that where you see synchronous instruction for like small group instruction, you might have synchronous for that small group, but the rest of the group may have asynchronous lessons outside of that, depending on what you want them to do at that time. So it's really a flexible document, and it's something that we have to work collaboratively as a group to make it the most successful. If we turn to the next page, we have an example of a middle school virtual schedule. And it's very similar in terms of being the regular school day, but this one's actually broken up into periods. And that is because instead of having one teacher over the course of the day, they will have multiple teachers working with them as they do now. So they have a 7-period day. They'll have 6 classrooms that they're assigned to over the course of that day. 7 periods. Each teacher will work with kids over the 6 periods. So when you look at it, they have those 7 periods with 1 prep period as they do now. And then once again in the afternoon, they have the teacher office hour and the independent work time. And that's where they're making sure that the students who are engaged have the ability to ask questions, just as we do for the elementary classes.
I do have another question, and I'm sorry I have so many questions. So a big concern of all parents is the social emotional of the students. Is there, have the teachers, I'm sure they have been, signs to look for, or do we have programs available that can reach out to that child, or do we have things incorporated in the day where they get to have some kind of social gathering together or be able to talk? I don't know exactly if you've addressed that or not, or
I would say that is part of the art of teaching. It's hard to articulate all of that in a kind of I
yeah.
guess spreadsheet is a little bit not so social and emotional, doesn't articulate that social emotional aspect. But our teachers are really good at being able to infuse that, just like they do in a traditional classroom in their daily lessons, right? That usually is embedded in their classroom. And if they experience a student struggling, much like they will in a traditional classroom, then they start to try different approaches within the classroom to get the student back up, maybe meeting in those office hours in the afternoons one-on-one with those students and having conversations. And then we have a progression of things that we can do, whether that be referral to our counseling for support or some different things as well. Again, much like the same process we do traditionally, we can do virtually. It looks and feels a little bit different, but we have great models that transition from a traditional environment to a virtual environment that will help students with that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Trevor, I'd like to take Debbie's question one step further. School culture. How, and you don't have to answer this, you can give us some information, get with the principals. What are the principals going to do at each of their individual school sites to maintain their school culture, maintain their students' connectivity to the school? Many things are out there. There's all kinds of companies that are doing all kinds of things virtually that we normally would have done on campus to connect students to the school. So if you could get something to the board about how we're going to maintain our school culture.
Absolutely. I will research that and follow up with you on our principal's plans.
So now we can move on to the next screen. And this one talks about some internal accountability measures related to SB 98. I think it starts with the concept that we have to have a 5-day schedule for all of our teaching staff, so that if there's kind of like the auditing process, if there's ever a question about what was taught, this is the schedule of activities. Once again, it could be a consistent schedule where from one week to the next, you have the same blocks of time, or from one week to the next, you can adjust it as you see necessary. And that's often what will happen, I believe, as teaching staff get involved in this. Some of the key components is that we have to make sure we have some designated time for our students on IEPs, our English learner population, and those students who are performing below grade level. So those are some of the target groups, but we have to have a plan for all of our students with sub-plans for those particular targets. In addition, we have to go through and provide weekly, basically a record of weekly engagement of our students. And I believe on this one, Mr. Rue might be able to provide some information on what that might look like on the part of one of our teaching staff.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we're in the process of creating an engagement log that we will be also soliciting teacher feedback on. But within that log, the teacher would be logging the student's time, or documenting the student's time in both synchronous and asynchronous instruction, as well as their participation within the class, and the assignments that they are completing and submitting to the teacher.
So, and this is something we already do in our classrooms, of course, but it's something we have to reinforce in this virtual environment, and maybe have to provide a bit more documentation of how we're doing it. Next screen. So as we look at this, how the concept, once again, of accountability measures, and some of these things are things that we do currently for all of our teaching staff, even in a traditional sense. Things such as classroom walkthroughs, but this will be walkthroughs through virtual classrooms. We'll do our traditional evaluation system, but we'll have to do evaluations based upon a virtual classroom. So all of our site administration will have access to Google Classrooms. We're still going to do progress reports and report cards. We have a new parent portal called Aries that will have to get all of our families and all of our staff fully up to up and ready to use. We'll continue to have our weekly elementary PLCs. They may look a little different this year, but they'll still have their PLC time that's equivalent to what they've had in previous school years. Our middle school, we say twice monthly middle school PLCs, departmental. Mostly over there, they're working on the departmental level, but they'll still have time to work together, particularly on the Wednesday minimum days. The walkthroughs on the virtual classrooms and the evaluation process, they'll follow the same procedures that we currently follow in a traditional classroom.
And I'll add to that we have the expectation that our site administrators are dropping into these virtual classrooms with frequency, just like we expect them in a traditional educational setting, in-person educational setting. We expect them to visit classrooms physically, and we do the same virtually. So we will have some measures in place to ensure that that is being done by our site administrators as well.
And Trevor, can you explain, a lot of our parents, they didn't feel the virtual education during the spring when we shut down so quickly was rigorous enough. And this is what this SB 98 is ensuring.
Sure.
But I just want the community to know that it's not going to be the same level that occurred in the spring, that this is completely different and an excellent education.
And it is. When the schools closed last spring more on an emergency basis, the guidance from the state, we didn't know how long schools were going to be closed, right? It was going to be a couple of weeks, and then that turned into longer and longer and longer. And so the guidance changed a little bit over time as people realized we were going to be out longer. But ultimately, there was kind of this hold harmless rule for students. They didn't want students penalized for something that was out of their hands in terms of, one day being in school in a traditional classroom and the next day going through distance learning. Many districts had difficulty getting devices, technology devices in students' hands. We did not have that challenge. Within 3 days, we had those distributed, but we also had paper packets as well. And so we did not, the state did not want students being penalized because they may not have had a technology device or something that would prevent access for them. And so, they gave guidance out that grades shouldn't go down. They could only go up. That work was voluntary. This is completely different because we're not shutting down on short notice, right? So the SB 98 was intended to say, here's the accountability measures, and now districts, you can develop plans to meet those measures. And so that's how it will be different. It'll be new content, rigorous standards. There'll be assessments, grade level standards, feedback by teachers, attendance being required, all of those things different than last spring.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Sorry, John.
Oh, we're good. So next screen. We've mostly hit we've hit all these areas, in fact, over the presentation. Just some of the other accountability measures. Much of this is on students, the daily attendance, the engagement records, the idea of a tiered re-engagement process. So students who are not attending as often as they should are brought back into the fold. We'll still have our attendance monitoring system in place. And when applicable, we'll do the SART and SARB process. We might have a bit of a challenge this year with the SART and SARB, but it's still something we value very much. And it's all designed to keep kids engaged in instruction and at school, even if it's a virtual environment for school. And as we move into the next section, this is actually about professional development and how we're helping our staff get ready for the first day of school and then beyond. And I think this is for Michelle Giroux to go over.
Yeah, so we are actually providing 3 different professional learning opportunities for our staff this school year. And the first two will be done prior to students returning. So what you see in front of you is the Romoland distance learning webinar progression. And it's really meant to be a self-paced professional development via screencast videos so that teachers can go back and reference the video at a later time. There are 5 complete sessions. All of the sessions follow the same format, and that is they are provided with a mini lesson at the beginning and then an activity that the teacher will complete. And that activity can actually be used in their virtual classroom that they will be having with their students. And if you look at the sessions, you can see that session 1 is really focused on making those powerful connections with both students and families, making sure that we are offering students an opportunity to see their peers and talk and be able to tell how they're feeling each day, and also emphasizing the importance of communication with our parents and some ideas as well for that Google Meets kickoff with a family engagement activity that teachers could do. Session 2 is meaningful learning experiences through structure and routine. And in that session, the importance of setting up your weekly and daily schedules will be addressed, as well as each teacher will be able to create a Bitmoji slide presentation and a weekly schedule that they'll be able to use in their virtual classroom. Session 3 really hones in on the importance of small group instruction and how to deliver that in a virtual setting, as well as meeting the needs of all learners. And that means each and every learner that is in your classroom and how you will be able to do that. And session 4 talks about the difference of assessment and feedback within the virtual world and addresses that with the teachers so that they can get timely feedback and address and modify their lessons as needed. And session 5 extends into design thinking. So really pushing forward, learning about design thinking, engaging students in real world problems that we face now, and be able to provide them with that reading connection through platforms such as News ELA and project-based learning. This is, I'm sorry, Vince. This is 5 sessions, but it's actually only 4 hours of professional development. If teachers engage in this prior to August 3rd, they will receive 4 hours of extra duty pay, or they have the choice of completing it from August 3rd through the 5th during our return to work days. Next slide, please. This is our professional development choice board. So we know that all teachers are in a different place on their tech learning continuum. So this is truly a self-selected and self-paced professional development based off of teachers' personal professional learning needs. This board will be posted on our district website, and it contains 5 different topics, professional development topics. And this is not the complete board. There's actually 4 choices per topic. And those are hyperlinks with the description there. They're videos anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and some of them are a bit longer, but teachers will be able to choose based off of what they need. On the next slide, all year long, we would like to infuse professional development for our teachers. And we're going to do that through Google Classroom. So we'll be setting up a Google Classroom for each content area, whether that's educational technology, English language arts and ELD, math and science. And teachers will be able to log into those classrooms and be able to, again, self-pace their PD throughout the school year. And each month there will be new content that will be included on those classrooms for teachers. It will address our current curriculum, and especially right now with being in a virtual curriculum environment, it will really focus with all of those Google Classrooms will truly focus on our online components of our current curriculum adoptions with Wonders, StudySync, and Go Math, as well as use of district supplemental online resources, which would be our Brain Pop, our iReady, News ELA, Epic Books, and other technology tools that teachers are familiar with. And then recently, we also demoed a support, what would be a support for teachers. It's called Nearpod. And it integrates completely with Google Classroom, as well as commonly used technology tools such as Padlet, EduPuzzles, quizzes, Flipgrid, and many other tools. It has 8,000 pre-made standards-based online curriculum lessons, as well as pre-built lessons for all of our Wonders curriculum, K through 5, for every single week of the school year. So teachers, even if they need to put those lessons together, they're able to go in from a digital library, select the lesson that they want, and drop it right into that Google Classroom. And then Nearpod also validates the fact that our own teachers have great strength and great content. And so they're actually able to take their own lessons and download them into Nearpod and be able to add the engagement features that Nearpod has. And then we sent out recently a survey to our teachers asking them how they liked the demo. And so far we've received nothing but positive feedback and appreciation for us bringing this to them. So we're looking into that at this time.
I just want to pop in here real quick and share a little information about some of the professional development we're providing for ARIES as well. As you may recall, we started a process last summer to transition student information systems from Illuminate over to ARIES, which was kind of required on us since Illuminate started a process to discontinue their SIS. So it was kind of, a mandate that we switched to something. So along with a lot of other districts in our county, we made the selection as part of that consortium to go to ARIES. And so we're very close to being complete on that migration process. In fact, our scheduled go live date is tomorrow. So we've already communicated out to our teachers that there's a couple of different options available to them to receive training. The original plan before any of this madness happened was that there was going to be some kind of an in-person training provided by ARIES and or RCOE trainers. Obviously that had to change to a video conference type of training, but that's something that will be available to our teachers that with dates scheduled August 3rd through 5th, with those sessions being targeted to either elementary grade or secondary instruction. So teachers can participate in those trainings. I believe they are half day or full day. I think they're basically full days because it's two different sessions. So it's basically a full day of instruction to talk about gradebook and the teacher portal and all the different areas of ARIES that teachers are using. So that's kind of the live training where they would actually be on a live video conferencing session with a Google, or not Google, Force of Habit, with an ARIES instructor or an RCOE instructor to learn about those different modules. The other option is a self-paced option where teachers can log into an online product called ARIES Academy, which provides online self-paced modules that teachers can follow. It goes through all the same content that they can learn at their own pace. And then at the end of that, they have the opportunity to complete a certification exam. So teachers can get the same content, but actually become, ARIES certified teachers. So they can use either of those options to get trained. The other group that we need to provide some help with for ARIES, of course, is going to be our parents and guardians in our community, because they did have access to our previous student system by way of our parent portal. ARIES has a parent portal as well. So it not only is accessible via the web, just like Illuminate was, but it also has an app version available on either, iPhone type devices, iOS devices, or Android. So what we'll be doing to service that section of our community is mass creating those portal accounts. So for all of our students who are already enrolled in the system, we'll be able to create the accounts for their legal contacts automatically. So that should make the transition process much easier for those parents and guardians to get into the system. We're also going to be creating like a video, like a screencast video introduction that we can post on our website that will kind of walk them through sort of the key areas of the portal so that they'll just kind of have an understanding of how it works. And just like with Illuminate, this will be a really vital communications tool for us, and not just for parents and guardians to, kind of keep an eye on how their students are doing, see their grades, see their attendance, but also it can down the road be used possibly even as a communication tool where we can push out information about goings on in the district, or teachers maybe can be able to communicate with their parents and guardians of their students through that tool. That's probably not something that would happen until down the road once we get settled into the groove of the system, but has a lot of potential. We're excited about that.
So we just kind of talked a lot about the second block of the presentation, which was our professional development. So I guess I'll pause here and see if there are any questions that anybody might have in relation to professional development for staff.
I can just add that that the district has been really strong in providing professional development. And this has been going on for years. That included technology. So I feel our faculty or teachers are well prepared to provide an excellent education through using or utilizing technology. And it's always great to see that it's continuing.
I don't have a question, but just a comment of the internal accountability measures that our district's putting into place, not only for our staff, but also for our students. And as a board, we're going to be following that and asking a lot of questions as the year, the school year begins. I think it's excellent. Again, like Mrs. Moon said, we do have first of all, great staff, but we have great staff development coming. And I think if I was an educator at this time, I'd be a little bit worried. Oh my gosh, where am I going? What am I going to be doing? And I just want to iterate that we're on the right track. And also listening to other people in the surrounding districts, there isn't that communication piece. And there is that communication piece with Romoland. And if anyone feels that there isn't, then I suggest they contact their principal, because I know we get the communications just like everyone else does. So I just want to say, keep it up. It's great.
I'll just add that, what's helped this district, of course, no one could predict the COVID scenario that we're dealing with, but regardless of that, we made an investment in two things heavily the board supported multiple years ago. That was instructional technology and professional development for our staff. And I feel that, in light of the challenges that we're in right now and as a public education system, that investment that the board made going back several years, we've reaped the benefits of during these times. We haven't had as far to move as some, because we've been using technology consistently in our classrooms, and our teachers have received consistent professional development. There's always work to do, so don't get me wrong on that, but that's a credit to the board supporting those transitions several years ago. Mr. Butler, I think, could you move to the next slide? Thank you. So I'm going to take the lead on this one and really get some feedback from the board as well. One of the challenges we face that has been cleared up recently from the governor's announcement is, what criteria are we able to use? And we got some clarity on that about how when schools may be eligible to open up again. But I do want to share some of the things that I've heard over the last several weeks. And there was a lot of challenge and confusion, I think, when we were talking about opening up our schools for whatever, virtual, hybrid, or traditional models of instruction. But at the same time, on the nightly news, people are hearing about things shutting down, right? Restaurants, bars, gyms, whatever the service was. And so it created confusion for people in terms of, if things are shutting down in one area, how are we opening up in another area? And, created confusion for us as well, quite honestly. I think with some of the metrics that the governor has put out about being on or getting off as a county, the state watch list is a great thing. As the data starts to improve in the county, I think the statewide reopening stages that I've provided here, that was something put out from the state about how to reopen our economy. And that even evolved over time. Originally, it was stage 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that they added an accelerated stage 2 in there. What I would say is before this last kind of, I don't want to use the term lockdown, but until this last kind of back step that we're making, we were really operating in accelerated 2 area, and maybe even some of the earlier parts of stage 3. I know that because my sister is in a personal care industry job and she was able to return to work. We seem to be moving back more now into the early stage 2 part for we don't know how long yet. But as the county data starts to improve, it would make sense that as the economy starts to open up, and if we're able to open up more things in our economy, the opening up of schools might serve as a guide as how we open up schools as well. And so if we get to the point where the data is better in the county, as referenced earlier by Mr. Reller, and we start to see things start to open back up again, and we're off the watch list and all of those good things, that might be where we start to look at, maybe we move from virtual to our hybrid model, and then we see how that goes. Because one of the things I think that we're hearing is maybe Mr. Reller mentioned earlier, all of the contributing factors to the case surge that we're experiencing. And so I've heard it, did we open up too fast, or was it a culminating effect of multiple things? It's important that I think we consider how that economy opens and how we open up our schools incrementally alongside that. And of course, based on data, not on people's opinions. Things get very political in this topic. We know that. We want to base it on data and science. And so this might serve as a good gauge how the economy opens up and how we open up schools. What I would say is we will have a committee in our district that keeps track of this data daily. And one of the things we have to do is not only did the governor provide criteria on when schools can open up virtually, or when schools can open up to in-person instruction, he also provided some criteria on when specific cohorts of students or classrooms may need to be shut down, or when a school may need to be shut down, or when an entire district may need to be shut down. And there are some clear criteria for that as well. And so, and that occurs in 14-day increments as well. So I'll give you an example of that. If one of the criteria that the governor mentioned was if 25% or more of the schools in a district shut down in a 14-day period, then the superintendent should consider shutting down the district. So it's not necessarily 2 schools on the same day. It's 2 schools within a 14-day period, which means we have to monitor cases and outbreaks on a daily basis, because on the first day of in-person instruction we have a 14-day window, but day 2 starts at day 1 of a new window as well, if that makes sense. It's confusing, but so we'll have to have very specific monitoring metrics in place and reporting things from our schools. But we also know that the economy is not going to reopen unless the data is trending in the right way. So we'll get a good indication as our economy opens of the way that the data is trending. And what I would like to do is have that committee, when the appropriate time is to make the recommendations for the board to move to that next step. And that might require potentially an emergency board meeting. Sorry to say that, but we don't exactly know when the data is going to be where it needs to be for us to reopen. But we do know that we would want to try in-person instruction when the local health conditions would permit that to happen, right? And so with that, I think I would take any questions or comments or things from the board that you may feel you would like us to consider as well.
So Trevor, when the numbers lower and we are able to go back to face, can you share what's been implemented to ensure the safety of our teachers and our students and staff?
I can. I was prepared for that. I'm going to have Mr. Murray talk about that. I made him write the list down earlier today because it's pretty extensive. So I'll have him share like the PPE and the safety protocols.
Excellent.
So we've gone through and we had a safety committee get together, and over the course of the last couple of months, we've identified several items that would definitely be in need as we began the school year. Some of the basic ones are like soap, sanitizer. We ordered some through the district. We also got additional materials related to this from Riverside County Office of Education, and ultimately came from the state of California through RCOE. We have disinfectant spray, disinfectant wipes, and we also have backpack disinfecting systems that are designed to help our custodial staff, when we have our schools back in session, go through and more quickly and more efficiently disinfect an entire school in an afternoon after the students have left the school site. And the importance of that is the daily disinfecting. It's tough to do if you bring all of your custodians in doing it by hand, but with this backpack system, it really does improve the efficiency of our staff. We have additional materials such as face masks. We ordered quite a few from our district, I think about 20,000 of them. We also have some reusable masks that we purchased specifically for our teaching staff. On top of that, the County Office of Education through the state of California through RCOE has also provided 2 reusable masks and 2 disposable ones per student in our school district. So we have those materials to hand out. Those will be designed for students who don't bring them on a daily basis as the next set of masks that we'll have, because wearing masks will become an expectation on a daily basis. We also have face shields. We ordered early on 50 per school site, thinking that we might have staff who are interested in wearing them. And then as we started thinking about it, we also saw the need for maybe students who are receiving SLP services. And then we heard from the county that we'd be getting face shields as well. And we have about 900 of those from the state through RCOE. We identified the need to symptom check all of our students as they enter campus on a daily basis. And we ordered 10 no-touch thermometers. And we have an additional 4 thermometers provided from the state through RCOE as well. So right now we have minimally 14, the ability to have 14 stations at each school site to check for fevers as kids are entering the school site. And the hope even there is that parents are checking before the kids come to school, so that we can have them maybe not even come to school in the first place if they're exhibiting symptoms or they have a fever before they leave the house. We have some classroom dividers. We ordered 3,200 dividers, like testing dividers you'd see in a testing location, just to help mitigate some of the contact between students in those environments where 6 feet of distancing might be a challenge. And that's after we open up our schools for more of a traditional setting. We've ordered plexiglass shields to help in the front offices, in our libraries, in the school or the food service areas, so we can minimize contact between, the families and the community members that come into the front office and our front office staff, who otherwise they're dealing with quite a few different people over the course of a day. But we also have them in our libraries, in our food service areas as well. So we ordered 50 of them. And we have 9 of those plexiglass shields assigned to each of our school sites to start the school year off. And along with that, we have a lot of mitigating plans to help put partitions up in between locations. We are identifying isolation rooms for students who identified with COVID symptoms, not necessarily COVID, but symptoms, where we have to isolate them in a separate room prior to being sent home for the day as we wait for the parents, that type of thing. Even our staff are expected to go through a screening process. That'll be more of an individual screening process where they self-assess at the beginning of the day before they even come to work. And if they have any symptoms, if they have a fever, the expectation is they contact the school or their supervisor and get some guidance about whether they report to work that morning or if they take the day off because of the symptoms. And often that will go along with trying to schedule an appointment with a physician, that type of thing. Those are some of the key things as far as the PPE that we have coming in, or we actually have in our possession right now. As we begin the year, we're looking at establishing what process we're going to use to reevaluate how much additional materials we'll need. And it's tough to do that before the students are on campus, but we're trying to gauge what we'll need to do in terms of replenishing supplies as the year progresses. And we have an initial plan for doing a daily monitoring of the supplies, identifying how many are going out on a daily basis so that we can make sure we have enough as we continue the school year. Any questions you have beyond that?
Hey, John, I have just a quick comment. I want to, commend you on the Romoland School District opening plan document for 2021. You and your team, it is very detailed, very appealing and easy to read. So I really do appreciate that. Also, I want to give a shout out to our communications director for the documents that outline the different models, the video on the website. I've looked at many different districts and I'm involved almost every Saturday with different board members throughout the county. And I don't think any district has the information available to our parents in a manner that is so clear and appealing and makes you want to read it and understand exactly what it's telling us. So good job to the team on that communication.
Our safety committee is a really good group of people. The nice thing is they have a wide range of talents and background experiences, and they bring up concepts that sometimes you don't think about when you talk about safety procedures on the campus, particularly since we have never instituted these procedures in a public educational system before. And they're very thoughtful, and they bring up the what ifs all the time, it's a challenge when you have to respond, but it's always good to have those thought processes moving forward about how we respond to those situations.
I just have one comment. We don't have a crystal ball, and we don't know when things are going to get better. And it's up to each and every one of us to do the right thing to make things better. Social distancing, washing the hands, mask, we've all heard it. I also agree. I believe Ms. Cook said in her comments to the board, and I was going to bring it up as well, we have to provide consistency for our parents and our staff. And I think it is going to be a while before, this is again crystal ball stuff, before we're able to go back even to the hybrid. I want it consistent for our kids, consistent for our parents and our teachers, and I'm looking at the first trimester on October 30th, kind of thinking, okay, where are we at now? But I wish we had a crystal ball, but I think it's up to each and every one of us to do what we can and talk to our family members about what they can do so that we can return to traditional school at some point this year. But I think safety is the utmost important thing as a board member. And this board has said time and time again that safety we hold that above all things. And so I just want our staff and our community to know that.
So that's what I have for you in terms of the items that we have for PPE to start the school year off. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to use much of it at the very beginning because students will be learning virtually. But we first start with training our staff on what our expectations are for the staff as they enter our campuses. Our schools will not be running sessions in the classroom, but our schools will be open. And we want to make sure that all of our staff and the visitors that come to school are following these expectations. And we're starting with good procedures and good practice even before our students are returning to a classroom environment. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board as we on this topic? I would agree with the sentiment, Ms. Kleitz, that one of the things we have to be cognizant of is we don't want to be like a ping pong ball bouncing all over the place. And, you know, it's uncharted territory for all of us. So we just have to be as informed as we can be and make the best decision in the moment collectively with our students' well-being in mind. So, and that's both from a health perspective and an educational perspective as well. I think, Vince, if you can go to the next slide, we'll just wrap this presentation up. Just so you know, our school office is open Monday, and it was basically to help with questions around the transition of our new student information systems. We didn't know that Governor Newsom, when we made this decision, was going to make that announcement. And we also have people that are still returning some of the devices from the emergency closures. And also that's the staff that's also doing the outreach for the 1,200 or so family or students, excuse me, that maybe we didn't get a response from. And so we've got some pretty good indications today that they're getting a hold of a lot of people, which is great. July 22nd through the 31st is a window of time where we'll be making some professional development opportunities available for teachers to do from home. It's not required. They have the option of going through that professional development now. Some teachers like to do it if they can do it now, because when they come back for their 3-day, well, they won't be coming back, but the 3 days before school starts, some teachers like that time protected for their stuff. And so they would prefer to get these types of things out of the way now. Others want to preserve their summertime. And when they come back over those 3 days, they will engage in some of these modules as well. So it's just really up to the individual preference. And I know that John and the site principals are working diligently on staffing and creating class schedules so that when and if we're able to transition from virtual to the next model, that we're not having to be completely disruptive to our entire system. We're working real hard to try to group our students according to their preference on the 3 models now, so that when it is time to transition, we're not reconfiguring classes all over the place. We want to just be able to slide that teacher and that group of students together into the new model so that they don't lose any traction on their learning. And August 6th is the first day of school, and it's going to be here sooner than we realize. So, but we're ready to do it and do it well.
Thank you very much. Are we okay to proceed, Trevor?
Yeah, if there's no questions on the presentation, I think we can finish the agenda.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, we are going to move on to K, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved in one motion. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, excellent. Any discussion? And all in favor?
All right.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
All right.
and Ms. Moon, aye. Prior to beginning the action items.
Ms. Moon, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
It's a little challenging virtually. Normally, when we have a new administrator coming on board in our board meetings, we would stop and introduce them. And so I believe we do have one on our certificated personnel order. So Mr. Murray, would you speak to that, please?
I can. So I want to thank the board for accepting Heather Hills as our new assistant principal at Boulder Ridge Elementary. I also want to thank Heather Hills for accepting the position because I think she'll be a wonderful addition to our staff over at Boulder Ridge. She's kind of returning to the school site. She taught over there at one time. And I think she'll be a great addition to our administrative team. So congratulations and thank you to all.
Excellent.
Okay. Now I'm done.
Congratulations. Okay. And congratulations, Heather. Okay. Prior to beginning the action items, a board member has requested for the board to consider amending the board agenda and adding another action item for approval. At this time, Mr. Gary Reller would like to address the board to explain the amendment that he is recommending. Mr. Reller?
Thank you, Mrs. Moon. You know, just like I do, I know we all have all the faith in the world in our staff and the work that they've done. Many weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, we charged the staff with developing instructional models that we could incorporate when we end up going back to school. And we have a number of committees that have worked extremely hard on that and have developed a solid 3 instructional models. These models are continually being refined by our current committees that continue to work. And I think it is important for us to validate the work that they have done and to formally adopt these 3 instructional models for the 2021 school year. But the timing has to be, they cannot be implemented until the local and state public health parameters are met. So that's the agenda item that I am introducing for your consideration.
Do I hear a motion to accept the recommendation to amended section L, action items, and add the additional item to the agenda as presented?
I make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor, Mrs. Kleitz?
Could we have a little discussion there?
Oh,
Just
you can.
Okay. So, Mr. Eller, I like that point where you made about, first of all, approving it, all the 3 models, because you're right, these committees worked very hard on this. And second is I like the part where you said, until our state and local health officials have, cleared us to move on to different models. So with that in mind, I have no issue with that.
And then I want to add also that I like that our community has options, that when it is safe to return, there may be some that are higher risk. So they have the opportunity to remain online and in a safe environment. And then there's others, the hybrid, and then the last one being face-to-face. So I feel that we were presented with every option possible and providing the community to make their choice based on their own situation. So I commend that. Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor? Mrs. Kites?
Aye.
Mr. Reller?
Aye.
Mr. Sperry?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Being that the board approved the agenda amendment, item L3, adopt the virtual, hybrid, and traditional instructional models for the 2021 school year will be added to the agenda directly following L-2, at which time the board will hear the item once more and consider a motion to approve at that time. We will now proceed to section L, action items. So L1, 2021 grade span adjustment agreement. Mr. Murray to introduce this item.
This has become an annual GSA that we've approved through the district and the Romoland Teachers Association, identifying and creating limits to class sizes in grades TK through 3. It's worked out well for the district over the last several years, and we encourage you to vote yes on this topic.
Do any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a
Motion.
motion.
And do I have a second?
Second?
Perfect. And all in favor, Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, aye. L2, tentative agreement with the Romoland Teachers Association. Mr. Murray to introduce this item.
This is the second agreement we have with the Romoland Teachers Association. And this one covers a couple of different topics, specifically related to SLP, which are speech language pathologists, and their caseloads. Is following state guidelines for caseloads and is putting those numbers on paper. We're establishing a schedule for the use of our minimum days, the professional development and teacher prep time in the afternoons on those days we have minimum days. And finally, association release time for the association president.
And do any board members have comments or questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor, Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, aye. As earlier approved, we will now move on to the new item L3. L3, adopt the virtual, hybrid, and traditional instructional models for the 2021 school year. Mr. Payton to introduce this option or item.
Thank you, Ms. Moon. You just heard about that. So staff would recommend that the board adopt the virtual, hybrid, and traditional instructional models for the 2021 school year. And of course, the implementation of those models is dependent upon local health conditions and being able to safely do so.
Thank you. Do any board members have comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
All second. All in favor, Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Reller?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Sperry?
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are now at the closing comments. Do any board members have any comments for closing? Mrs. Kleitz?
Happy first day of school.
Mr. Reller?
Yes, I would concur with Ms. Kleitz. I would also like to highlight that, as I said earlier, if anyone can turn this around, Riverside County can. We just need to follow the expectations of our health officials.
Agreed. Mr. Sperry, any comments?
I'd just like to thank everybody for all the hard work they've been doing. I know that it seems like every day you come into work and things change on you, and it really does from week to week. So appreciate you continuing to grind out these schedules with all the changes you have, and happy first day of school coming up. Thank you.
And I'd like to close just by thanking everybody for all their hard work. Preparing for online is twice as hard as face-to-face. So I know you all are working really hard, and I hope all staff, faculty, and students have a wonderful first day. Our adjournment, our regular board meeting is now adjourned at 5:19.
Bye, everyone.